Fine.
But they're not. Hello. Welcome to the Simply Together show. It is the 10th of June already. 10th of June. And I've been out this morning and it's... What are you shaking your head for? Have you been out, Nico?
Yes, I have.
You know, I can only see the cup. It is trying to do something. It's trying to rain. It's not cold, but it's pretty rubbish for June, I would say. So, yes. But apparently we're getting some heat wave coming at some point. So
I'll believe that when I feel it.
Hopefully. So, before I get to our guest, how are you doing, Nico?
I'm okay, thank you. Just a little bit helter-skelter, as I say, but never mind. We're here, we thank God. We're grumbling the weather like you this morning, but yeah, no, it's all good. I can't really complain, okay. I just do. What about you? Who's frozen?
So, is that me are we not frozen? Yeah, that's me doing that rubbish again. I'm back now. I think I disappeared, but I'm back. Yeah, I'm good. We've had a busy weekend because we were at our queen, our leader, our boss. It was Mrs. D. Bailey's 60th birthday surprise barbecue on Saturday, and so we were there enjoying ourselves. And that was really lovely. And then on Sunday coming up, we're out again. I think there's 9 of us going to London to celebrate Trisha's, mine, and Dee's 60th. So things to look forward to. And then I've got another event for my 60th the Sunday after. So it's all happening. It's all good. It's all good. So we have got Ash. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very, very good. I mean, I'm just looking out the window as well, and I'm sort of half torn between hanging the washing out or leaving it in the tumble dryer. So it's, yeah, I feel your pain. It's warm, but not quite warm enough. So I'm just sort of sitting here, with my hoodie by my side, just in case it does change and I need to kind of get warm quickly. But no, apart from that, I can't complain too much about the weather or anything else in that regard.
Yes, I'm one of those people that I need to see the sunshine before the washing goes out, because of my job where I'm counselling people. I cannot stop and say, can you just stay there 5 minutes whilst I get the washing in because it's raining? I can't do that. So it's got to be sunny. It's got to be sunny, and that is not today. So no washing going out. So, Ash, can you tell us a bit about yourself before you tell us what it is you're going to be talking about today? Okay. So who is Ash? What do you do?
Yeah, my main job is I'm a senior lecturer at the University of Bedfordshire, and I teach on the Childhood and Youth Studies degree course. I teach across a number of degrees, but for the last 12, 13 years, my primary focus academically has been focusing on children's rights and child development, and sociologically how we view not just children, how children grow up and how we safeguard and protect them, but the role of parents and adults in making those decisions. So I've been doing that for a few years. My background is fairly eclectic. I mean, I graduated, as I remind my students, many years ago. And I didn't really have an inclination to work with children per se, but after I graduated, I worked in a homeless shelter, and the recurring theme when meeting sort of the people in the shelter was that life didn't start to unravel when they had nowhere to live. For some of the people, life started to unravel in the missed opportunities in childhood.
Yeah.
Things that didn't happen, that should have happened, things that were seen, that were ignored. And so from that point onwards, really, I started to kind of develop much more of an interest about those early missed opportunities. So I subsequently went and worked in the United States for a couple of years, working with young people on an offender program, with children who mostly brought up in gang families or issues of abuse and addiction and so on, before sort of moving back to the UK and moving in and on to working with children with addictions. So after kind of working in youth justice for a number of years, I sort of ended up working at the university, where I started as a guest lecturer. My role is primarily as a lecturer, but a number of years ago, I was looking for volunteering opportunities for students to just to do some more community-based work, really, so they could touch base with not just what they learn, but how they can connect with the community with their studies. And I sort of met Sharon Hill, who is the volunteer coordinator at Flying Start. And I thought, well, in the process of trying to see what our students can do, I started volunteering myself, and I've stayed there ever since. So the area that I kind of I particularly volunteer for is the Dads group. Once a month, we run a Dads group in town. And it's just really about trying to sort of be there for dads. We know that dads are quite a hard to reach group on occasions. They can be kind of somewhat stubborn in asking for help and a little bit forthcoming in, or not particularly forthcoming in asking for it. So we set up this little group, which has been a kind of a hardy, sort of persistent presence that just needs a lot more promotion, really, to get dads to be much more involved.
Okay. So you primarily lecture, but you also volunteer as well.
Yes.
With regards to the Dads group. So
yeah.
And you've been to the States, and you've worked in the States. So you went to the States and you then came back. Is there a difference between what they do and what we do?
One of the things...
Sorry, did I get your question, Nico?
I think for me, I mean, it was a while ago. What I sort of discovered is part of the United States, if we try to avoid watching the news now, part of the issue of the United States then is they do a lot. They're a lot more creative in their sort of not-for-profit organisations, which means they're allowing themselves to go out there and try new and interesting ways of engaging with families and young people, particularly young people in trouble. So part of the organisation that I worked in, I was in the middle of a desert. I was based in Arizona. We're with 60 young people from a variety of backgrounds, white kids, black kids, Asian kids, Mexican, Latino sort of kids. A lot of them had issues around gangs and gang activity as well. So I was kind of prepared to use my sort of Englishness to be sort of played out a little bit, because it allowed me to ask sort of slightly ignorant questions because of a culture gap.
Yeah.
Like, how do these things happen? And tell me what goes on here, because I'm not sure I understand. But I think for a lot of the children that I worked with, there was a lot of trauma involved in their life. I particularly remember speaking to one child, and a traumatic memory for him within a gang-related neighbourhood was he remembers playing on his little PlayStation thing or whatever it was back then. And his dad was involved in local crime and hustling and all that sort of stuff. Knock on the door, dad opens the door, dad gets shot dead in front of him. And that's his memory from 8. That kind of plays out large in how he views his life and the world that he lives in from that point onwards. So there is some interesting things. One of the other interesting issues with this is that later on in the programme, they started bringing over some lads in the criminal justice system from places like Idaho. And these are lads who are mostly involved in organisations like the Supreme White Power Movement. These are 14-year-old boys with swastika tattoos.
Okay.
You know? And when you sit down and talk to this lad, this young man, and you say, well, that's unequivocal. And what that represents cannot be sort of like misconstrued. And he says, but you have to understand, this was a birthday present from my father. So
Really?
we're talking sort of generational, perhaps a passing down of certain cultural expectations from father to son. And that's a challenge.
It's always been said, you know, and people I think do understand that nobody is born racist, for example. They're not born racist. That has then been taught to them by whoever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whoever.
Yeah.
You know, so he got his is a present from his dad. Oh, yes. Okay.
And I think what kind of links that as well is sometimes we kind of have a deterministic view that the path that children's lives are set out on is irreversible. And I think part of our responsibility is to recognise the social drift away from what we socially regard as acceptable. And actually, periodically, there's a fork in the road where we can just nudge people back in the right direction.
Yeah.
But sometimes we miss that opportunity because we don't understand what we're seeing in front of us, or the behaviour looks aggressive or confusing. And so sometimes it just slips. And I think the more it slips, the further from that optimal line you go, and the harder it is to kind of push back in that gem. And sometimes it just takes the right person, the right relationship, a nudge. There's a particular, I'm always kind of drawn, there's Ian Wright, the footballer, did this amazing documentary about the teacher that transformed his life.
Yeah.
But just believing in him and telling him that he was okay, even though there were other issues going on. So I think that whether you're a sort of mum or a dad or a teacher, a social worker, a neighbour, an uncle, an aunt, I think part of what we're trying to establish somewhat with safeguarding is that you don't need to be necessarily, you don't need to be heroic. You just need to be observant and brave enough just to kind of pay attention for a while and push back in the right direction. And I think that's really important.
Wonderful. Okay. So quick hello. Hi, Robson. And hello to Sharon, because I know Sharon is watching as well. So hello to both of you. Hi. So tell us then about what you've come on here to tell us. I was just about to say what it was.
Yes, yeah. No, honestly, I mean, I could talk all day, and I could probably talk far too much, and probably sometimes often do. Really today is, as I say, I work, I volunteer at Flying Start, and we kind of have this little corner of this organisation that's the preserve of trying to engage dads, not just dads, but male carers. And we understand that families are blended, so that's not just dads, that's stepdads, that's uncles, that's grandparents, foster carers, whoever. And we run a series of kind of monthly themed events. So we try to do things around dad's mental health, for example. So a really good statistic I picked up the other day was that the peak time for depression and anxiety in new fathers is the last 3 months before the child is born and up to the first 6 months of the child arriving. Because dads start to question their relevance, because sometimes they feel invisible, because understandably, and all for right reasons, lots of focus is on mum.
Yeah.
And that's great. But sometimes the dads kind of feel a little bit ambivalent and kind of shut away. So they kind of, they get involved in the background, but they don't want to kind of get it wrong. So they default to mum. So we end up with this kind of strange sort of circle. But one of the things we asked our groups of dads, of all the things that we discussed, what's the gap that they would like us to be able to discuss? And one of it is around safeguarding children, particularly around the issue of social media, because obviously, you know, as a child growing up, we had 3 television channels, and trying to explain to my 13-year-old that we had a telephone that was chained to the wall and didn't do anything apart from make phone calls. So one of the things that we're sort of looking at is just about, as there's a lot of talk around social media, there's some guidance came out, I think only yesterday, suggesting that children should be on social media no more than 2 hours a day. I think the average use for that is quite important and quite surprising.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do, what we're trying to ascertain with this group is just to kind of, whilst it's quite scary, social media stuff, platform stuff is also incredibly useful. There's some amazing stuff that is really, really good for children as well. So on the 12th of July, and here's the pitch at the Flying Start Centre. what we're going to do working alongside the NSPCC. We're just going to do a 2-hour brief introduction session for any kind of dads or male carers who may just be interested in kind of coming along and perhaps developing some guidelines and frameworks about how to manage social media with your children. Because the discussion that I had is I'm trying hard not to be an analog father in a 5G world. So I kind of have to kind of try and keep up, and it's exhausting and it's tiring. So anyone like the NSPC that can offer some guidance and some direction as to how we can do this effectively, but without quite so much energy and burn, would be really good. So so that's on the 12th of July. I think you need to email Flying Start. So I think it's Flying Start at EY Alliance. You got details there. That's amazing. And so that's the plan, really. So we've got
some going across the bottom.
Excellent, thank you. So that's the main reason, really, is for promotion. Now, obviously, Flying Start is an amazing organisation. They've got the picnic in the park next Wednesday at Wardown Park from 10 till 2. But specifically, we're just trying to sort of do this sort of a dads and male relatives workshop around with the NSPCC around safeguarding with social media and iPads and phones and all of that sort of stuff. So that's what we're promoting. That's what I'm here to discuss today.
That sounds very interesting.
I've just noticed that Selwyn's there, so shall I bring him up?
Yes, yeah.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hi, Cecile.
Hello.
Hi, Dee. Hi,
Hello.
Nike.
How you doing?
I'm here. I'm one of those granddads.
Are you okay, Selwyn?
I'm very well, thank you, Dee. I'm one of those analog fathers in the 5G world.
It does very much feel. I mean, it does. We are sort of running to stand.
Did you have to get somebody to help you?
Yes, God was helping me.
Well, in my it's often my 13-year-old who's helping me with anything to do with stuff. And I think that's important because I think often we lean on our children to help guide us, but of course that doesn't help them when they need our guidance around what they're doing. And I think there is that age. I think there's a sort of tipping point. I was talking to someone the other day, one of my students who's doing her master's degree research, and there's that tipping point where you can control what your children view because you still have an air of authority about you. But as your children develop from 10, 11, 12, the social pressure about getting phones and iPads and tablets, as they move towards independence and autonomy, becomes much more difficult to manage.
Yes.
Because, a perfectly acceptable but quite challenging part of parenthood is when your children don't quite need you in the way that they used to. And that means that sometimes there's secrecy and they're taking guidance from friends or whoever they're chatting to online on those occasions. So again, it's about opening those dialogues. And one of the things myself and Selwyn talk about is, I think with dads, as a dad myself, is that sometimes we make the assumption that our relationships with our children get easier as they get older. Because we think we can relate to them better. And actually we need to grow alongside our children so we understand each other better. Otherwise, I think part of that disparity is we tend to sort of diverge and maybe risk going off in that direction. And by the time they hit that sort of independent 12 to 15 age group, it's difficult to talk to them about the things that scare us about the world they're entering. And I think that we have to kind of maintain as early as we can that dialogue about the difference between nurturing and interfering. And I think that only comes, I think, with trust. Being able to kind of, your children trust you in the decisions that you make for them, but then you also have to learn to trust them a little bit as they grow into themselves. So that's really important.
Okay.
Nikki? I was just going to say, because I wrote it down, where you said about analog in the 5G world, that kind of segues into what you, what's wrong with this? What you just said, in the sense that where you have fears for where they're going, because obviously they move with the technology much quicker. They understand it much quicker. Yeah. And I think my question is, do you find that the fears that you have, they take quite a while to actually catch up with you as well? So by the time you've realized oh my God, this is really scary. What's going to happen with with your youngsters?
Yep.
They've already either gone past it or they've stepped into it before you could.
It's a great question, because I think that sometimes we can come a little bit blasé about how well our children are doing. Sometimes you can become overwhelmed, and it's just one problem in a pile of other issues that are also going on at the same time. So how do you pick your way through this minefield of not setting little bombs off everywhere because you want to because you're scared, but at the same time not being so overbearing, but it becomes complicated. I don't know if anyone saw the docudrama kind of Adolescence.
I've heard about it. I haven't seen it yet.
There's a point, without any kind of spoilers, there's a part of it where they're good parents, they're good providers, they're good, strong, working class. Money's not an issue. They've got parents that love each other and so on and so forth. And the parents kind of look at each other and said, why didn't we notice this sort of stuff happening? And I think that unless you kind of keep your finger on the pulse of what's out there, it's quite easy to pass you by, because things seem quite comfortable. And of course, I mean, we live in that world of sort of social influence. If you think that, I don't know how many hours a day that someone spends online, it's probably quite a lot. There's a lot of messaging, a lot of bombarding of conflicting messages that, they see your children now as consumers, buy these trainers, wear this tracksuit, drink this cola, blah, 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 blah. And so I think that part of the issue is, as a child growing up, I mean, we didn't have we didn't have Sports Direct. We didn't have kind of sports fashion. We had jumble sales and hand-me-downs. If anyone still remembers jumble sales. Whereas today children, I mean, are much more savvy, much sooner about image and the impression that they cause. I mean, sociologically, that's really interesting, because it's not often about what you think about yourself. It's also what influences you is how you think you are seen by others. Yeah. And so although we've always had bullying, we've always had kids who are different or stand out, we've always had social sort of moral panics about the welfare of our children. I'm sure my grandmother had the same issue with my mother about her being a child of the 1960s and where is that all going. And then I'm sure my mother had the same conversation with my father in the early 80s about VHS recorders and the emergence of computers and all of that stuff as a home entertainment. So every generation has its own anxieties about not keeping up with the next generation coming through. And I think that sometimes with the parents that we work with, sometimes it's easy to feel overwhelmed, not trapped exactly. But if you're a dad and you're doing long shifts, if you're the mum that's doing what we now refer to as the double shift, that you're not just now working, you've got all the other stuff to do when you get home as well. Part of that kind of emancipation of the equal pay and women's rights in the workplace has worked only partially, I think, because it's not alleviated women of the roles at home, because there's now an expectation they do both. And actually, I think with some of the dads, they want to be more useful, but sometimes they kind of stand back and think, will I just get in the way?
Is that not just an excuse? Will I get in the way?
I think sometimes it depends on relationships, but I think it can become a default position, which is why we sort of say very early on. I think that fathers need to be kind of engaged. I mean, this role of masculinity, this generational concept of fatherhood is interesting, because myself and Selwyn are talking to new fathers who are sometimes battling the generational expectations of what being a father should be. So for example, we have parents whose children maybe have additional needs or maybe on the spectrum, and they're trying to convey to their parents that discipline isn't what this child needs. This child needs understanding. Yeah. And so again, there's a kind of a generational battle between the previous generation and your role, the father you want to be, and the child that perhaps doesn't conform. Because I think part of this, and it's just my views on this, is that, as I said earlier, I think there's the father that you want to be, and then perhaps sometimes there's the child that you expect to have. We want as a masculine kind of sports. I play a lot of sport. A big part for me is my children play sport. But what if I don't have a child that doesn't like sport? How do I adjust to that?
I'm not going to share because Selwyn knows me, but I could share on that. Okay. And that can be quite difficult if you have a child that does not like sport, for example. Yeah. I have one of those, and that did not go down very well. But maybe really the generation now may be slightly different. I don't know.
Or you have a softer child, or a child that who likes to play chess, but doesn't like to play football, or things along those lines. But the other bit, which is a bit more niche and another conversation for another day, is as dads, I think sometimes as a father, you view the child as an extension of yourself, your masculine kind of self. That's my boy. That's my daughter. Yeah. But when you start to look at stuff like around additional needs, sometimes dads, myself and Selwyn work with and work alongside, is some of the questions they ask is my child developing in a way that's quote unquote normal? And I think sometimes the fear is the dads don't like to ask the question because they're much more scared of the answer, which is, does my child have special needs? Is my child's developmental delay normal because they're not, or is it something else? And in the world of social media, we drop in for like special needs, autistic spectrum, ADHD, and so there's a lot of kind of anxiety around this. So part of what we try to sort of get with dads to talk about is to say, it's not about being the dad you want to be. It's about being the father your child needs.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And understanding that.
Before I'm going to go to Selwyn next, but I just want to ask anybody who's watching, anybody who watches this on catch up, if you have got teenagers, ask them if they know what a jumble sale is. I have not heard that in so many years.
I know the answer.
I'm going to ask them at time tonight.
Are there any, does anybody even know what that is anymore? Because I think you have to be a certain age to know that.
Yes.
So, Selwyn, tell us a little bit about what you do outside of what you're doing with Flying Start.
Have you got a week?
No, we've got about 5 minutes for that. Just that.
Okay. I'm the 8th of 11 children. I was the firstborn here. So my mother and father had 7 children. My father had 1, my mum had 6 before they met here in Waterloo, London.
Wow.
That makes me the bridge child.
I didn't know there was that many of you.
There you go. So when you said, I know you, I don't know you. I know of you. Yeah, I know a little bit about you. Like I know a little bit about Ashley, and I know nothing about Nikki. But what I do outside, why I had to mention that is growing up as the first child born here, I was somewhat spoiled in some people's eyes. Yeah. But what it was, my parents were experienced. My brother on my father's side, I've not met him yet, and he's got to be 74, 75 if he's still alive.
Wow.
And then the brothers and sisters on my mother's side, I've met 2 sisters, and I've buried 1 brother and a nephew. So I believe the others are passed, and I'm not sure. But we talk about the Windrush. And with the Windrush, what you have is families who came here in the 50s and 60s and left children behind and started new families here in some cases. And some of the children here didn't know. I was lucky enough, being the firstborn here, my mother was always writing, sending stuff back to my brothers and sisters back in the Caribbean. And then when we got a phone, one of my sisters would call from Dominica, reverse the charges, and the phone bill was £25, and my father hit the roof. Now, if you think back to the 60s,
that was a lot.
Having a phone bill was a luxury in itself.
Yeah.
but I didn't realize the impact until after my father had passed, and I looked, and when my father was complaining about the phone bill, I was earning £25 a week. I was earning as much money as my father. So when you talk about jumble sales and secondhand clothing, a lot of people forget the Salvation Army. The Salvation Army helped house my father when he arrived here, because he turned up with a friend. When they turned up at Waterloo, my mother was there with the friend's girlfriend. They went off and sailed into the sun, and whatever happened. My father was housed by the Salvation Army, maintained contact with my mom, and hence I was born, and my brothers and sisters here. And the Salvation Army, I'll always have time for, and other charities. And I guess growing up with jumble sales, I didn't have to wear secondhand clothes because I was the firstborn here, but my two brothers younger than me were always getting my hand-me-downs, apart from the shoes, because I had extremely big feet for all the walking I'd done. I remember before there was Lidl's and Aldi's, I used to go in to shopping with my mother at the co-op. And I would walk around with my mum, and I'd say to my mum, it's going to be about £15 on the shopping this week. And my mum would say, if you're within £1, I'll treat you. So I was treated quite often because I was not more than £1 out very often. But there was no Uber. There was no taxis. Yeah. So I was rather fit from the point that when my brother was born, my mum would we lived in Brixton, and I remember it like yesterday. I would have been about 2.5, 3, and I'm walking beside my mum with the shopping. My mum's also got 2 bags on the back of the baby buggy with my brother in it, and we had to go up 5 flights of stairs in Brixton where we lived. So we get to the house. My mum would open the door. She'd run upstairs with the first 2 bags, come back down, and then take my brother upstairs and then come back down. Then she would grab the buggy, and then I'll go up the stairs with the 2 bags of shopping.
Wow.
And you say, wow, but you didn't know any better. Yeah. You look, when I went back to the Caribbean, it was no back chat to my mum, oh, I don't want to do this, like the kids do now, whether they're 2 years old or 12 years old or 20 years old. It was a discipline. There was an order in the household. My dad would be at work, and my dad would come home, dinner was cooked. He would play with me and my brother, but my father couldn't read and write. So he used to get picked up for work. He used to get dropped off. And my mother found a job for him in Vauxhalls in Luton. He came up, and he ended up working for British Rail, blah, blah, blah. And here I am now, 60 years on, and knowing my way around and giving a bit back to the kids.
Yeah.
Because my mum was a housewife, what she used to do, if you think of a Coronation Street house, you open the front door and you're on the pavement.
Right, yeah.
That's where we lived, 87 Wenlock Street, Luton. And the only thing that came through the front door was the post. Anybody else had to go down the alley because we lived in the front room. And my mum and dad rented out the 3 rooms upstairs. My sister, who's immediately older than me, she came here when she was 14, 15. And she's been here 60 years, and she's had a lot of challenges since she's been here, a lot of heartache. She's lost her son, blah, blah, blah. Life moves on. But she's been here 60 years now, and she hasn't been back to Dominica. So for this one, I'm taking her back with the blessings of the family, because she was struggling. She had a breakdown in London. I don't mind sharing that with you. She lost her son, who was 42. 7 years ago. She wasn't taught to be a mother, and he suffered because of that. So working with the Fathers Group, I've seen all sorts of drama. I've buried a brother of my own. I've buried friends through various challenges. And the story rolls on to working now with Sharon, who asked me to come on board, and with Ashley, and there's a great team. We support the local community, and I'm a father now to 7, 5 boys, 2 girls.
7.
Yeah. You knew me, didn't you? Yeah.
I don't know you at all. I don't know you at all. I clearly don't.
There you go. And the 4 boys, they were. You're gonna have to excuse me. I've got a delivery, so I'll finish the story. I've got a delivery outside. I'll just pick up. 1 second.
Go on.
That's one thing you didn't get when back in those days. You didn't get deliveries like that, did you? Oh my Lord, that's so funny.
Yeah, but is that because we actually never ordered anything in those days?
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, there was catalogues, wasn't there? So you have to go through,
and there still is.
And there still is. I mean, there's no kind of but no, rarely. I mean, even if you wanted sort of like theatre tickets, I remember as a teenager wanted to go and see a concert, and you just put a check in the post to the venue.
A check in the post.
Yeah. And Sarah was talking earlier. I remember sort of, we'd go to Sainsbury's, and it was there weren't conveyor belts. There'd be a lever that they would sort of shunt and there's the old push button till it would clack and and it was,
I used to love those push button tills
turning. I remember kind of again having to queue out the bank because it was at half-day Wednesdays. If you ran out of money on the Friday, you were stuck till Monday unless you could get a check, catch a check somewhere. And I think that's the issue, isn't it? Everything is so quick. Everything is
very quick. It's very pop idol, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which kind of means, as you were saying about kids and social media and mobile phones and such like.
Yeah.
As a parent, you've really got to be quick, because before you even get a chance to even think of what they might be doing or what they might have seen, they've most probably already seen it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because you've really got to be quick.
Yeah.
And do you find, Ashley, that what's happened, like with the onset of social media, so you know how, from my experience, we had Facebook first. Yeah. And then everybody came on Facebook, and then all the kids went off and went on to Insta. And then everybody came on Insta, and then all the kids went, well, I mean, I know they still use it, but they tend to go off it. They don't communicate on it. Yeah. And then they all went to, Snapchat and various other ones. So it's like, it's almost like the dodgems, isn't it? It's like wherever the adults go, the kids don't want to be there. And that is transferred online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's also sort of perhaps one of the things, and this is probably going to make me sound like sort of a bit of an old sort of curmudgeon, really, is that I mean a lot of my childhood was punctuated with lots of boredom, a lot of sort of sitting around or kicking a ball in the park or taking a bike out. There was kind of, I grew up in a sort of small housing estate, so your friends were next door or down the street or up the road, and I think that a lot of that gratification was delayed. A lot of it was waiting for things to happen and being patient with it and sitting with it. Whereas I think the issue with social media is that it's really hard to delay gratification when everything is available instantaneously. You want this to get delivered tomorrow.
Yeah.
You can if you don't want to go down to McDonald's, someone will bring it to your house. At a cost, so everything is sort of there is a bit of a delay. I think there's that ability to delay gratification in a consumerist world, where in a throwaway world, where have it, use it, throw it away, get the next thing, have it, throw it, and I think that's punctuated with perhaps aspects of guilty parenting who are time poor, so they substitute stuff for connection, and. And I think, and therefore, and you blink and you know it, and suddenly your children are teenagers and they've got views of their own and opinions and all of those other things as well. So, again, it's just trying to find that time and space. And perhaps one of the things that Sarah and I talk about is there's some amazing books out there, but it's the constant battle between quality and quantity. It doesn't necessarily have to be lots of time. It just has to be good time.
Yeah.
And when we say good time, we sort of mean doing stuff. I mean, it's easy to kind of, on a movie, go to a cinema. I kind of avoid sometimes a cinema because you're sat in a room in the dark, not talking or doing anything, just focusing on the big screen rather than the small screen on your phone. So again, it's about meaningful, but through periods of austerity, it's expensive to do meaningful stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you go up the road, and it's not cheap to go to a cinema. It's not cheap to go to the local museum. It's not cheap to do these things anymore. And so you're balancing time and money, and that's really difficult for lots of families.
Is that
go on?
Sorry, no, I was just going to ask, is that something that comes up in your dad's group as well?
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, I think with that, I mean, it is. Yeah, we've got lots of dads because the dads are trying to fit. It's a very diverse group, but dads are trying to still fit into that conventional role of expectation about they provide discipline and they provide money. They work. They are providers and they are disciplined. I still remember as a kid growing up with you wait till your father gets home because that's where the discipline arrives.
Yeah.
And so what we tend to sort of have with groups, with the sort of dads groups, is that kind of getting them to spend some quality time. And I think that when the dads come down to our group, it's only for 2 hours, and we'd love it to be more, and we'd like it to be more often. But it is a meaningful 2 hours. They get to play with their kids whilst talking to other dads. They get to kind of sit down and do reading time. They get to kind of bottle feed. They get to kind of ask us. So we try to kind of get dads to be involved. So a question we had the other day was, we had a dad who wasn't quite sure. I think he was sort of Indian, perhaps Pakistani, Bangladesh background. He wasn't quite sure when he was able to access early years funding for his children. So again, it's that kind of, so there's always plenty of professionals on help to kind of say, okay, if you want to think about getting your child registered, you need to do it by this time, go and have a visit. So it's giving the dads the opportunities to be more involved in the other stuff. And there's lots of research that suggests that one of the things that you said earlier, Cecile, is about do men use that absence as an excuse or to not get involved. But culturally, that's interesting because there's research which says that even if a child is unwell at school, the school will nearly always phone mum first. Even if dad's at home and available. And even sometimes when dad has picked up the phone, they'll still say, oh, is Mrs. Jones there, please? And it's like, I can take it. I'm the dad. So in some respects, dads are limited in what they can do, but then often they're ignored as well in that role.
Okay.
So we're trying to move them away from that provider disciplinarian, expectation into someone that can develop a relationship with their children in small and meaningful ways.
Okay, so culturally, can't even speak now. Culturally, yeah. From your perspective, then, Selwyn, do you come across? What are you seeing in those dad groups? Is it being accessed by all cultures, or is it just one culture? What's going on?
Luton's a very diverse town.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to what I was saying before, let me finish on that first. So although I say it's 7, 4 of the boys are adopted. The mother and the father didn't get on. The mother spoke to my mum. So she said the 4 boys seldom to look after them. And going back to my volunteering role, one of my jobs was working in a school in London, dealing with boys that were being groomed, especially the tall boys, to work with the gangs, being the drug runners. So that's where the postcode war started. And from there, I as a football coach and the PE department were always challenged on a Saturday because of our boys getting involved in the wrong types of people, wrong company. And London, where we were, was a diverse group: Asian, African, Greek, Turkish, Chinese. Everybody was there. It was a melting pot of international people. What I'm finding with Luton, you still have a diverse group, predominantly Asian, Indian Asian, Pakistani, and then you've got the different religions as well. Is European, Irish, Caribbean, African. So what you find in Luton, I'm lucky enough to say I grew up at a time when my parents came to Luton in the 60s. There were signs on the door said no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. And growing up surrounded by Catholic students, Scottish, Italian families, predominantly Catholic, Polish, all of them were on within about 5-10 minutes of where I lived, and we all grew up together. We didn't recognize, apart from maybe one or two Asian men and women and the African Caribbeans, we're all one. And I'm still in contact. I was running around the park when I was 4 years old. It was right around the corner from my house. And I helped one of the guys that were mentoring me at the time. We didn't call it mentoring. He was just like a big brother. Celebrate his 80th birthday back in March this year. And I was lucky enough. One of my hobbies was photography, and the wife turned around and said, "Selwyn, you've been Craig's best friend." I was like, "Well, not all his life," I said, because he's 20 years older than me. But you realize the roots and the contacts that you have with people in town, and I just use that as my way of dealing with the parents here. A lot of the guys here are like, the challenges they have, as Ashley was saying, is understanding the language, understanding the culture. In some cultures, the father is just the breadwinner and he comes home. And if it's a boy child, he'll take him to cricket, football, rugby. And if it's a girl, mum normally takes care of it. So.
Is that another parcel?
No, that's a travel agent. But I won't turn it off because, let me turn it off.
I think it is interesting. I mean, Luton is a marvelous place for lots of reasons. But the dynamics of a group that we get, so we got dads sort of first generation Italian family who they bring their children, their boys up through the English education system. We have lots of young Asian dads, first time dads, so sort of coming to the group as well. We've not so much at the moment, but we kind of have lots of Eastern European dads who used to come in as well, just because they use the kind of time to have spent 2 hours with their children, but also perhaps give mum a bit of 2 hours rest, as it were, which is interesting. But also, I mean, with the sort of Eastern European dads, again, there's those again their experience, particularly in being probably children of the post-Cold War age, was very, very different to kind of Western European views of sort of parenting, particularly when you look at the experiences of countries like Romania, for example, and how they treated children with special needs and disability, and the stories of the orphanages and so on and so forth. So it's a very diverse group. We have two dads who are in same-sex relationship who have adopted their son, and he's a marvelous child, a very, very super confident, sweet, lovely kid, great parents. So incredibly divided. One of the issues, though, is just trying to get some more of the local dads from the housing. We're based in the middle of a housing estate, and trying to get some local dads in to do this thing, because we don't want this to become a preserve of just well-informed dads. We want to kind of reach out to those who are maybe uncertain because they're less informed about their role and what they can do about it. So we would like to kind of reach out to get a few more to maybe give the dads group a go, because they're the ones who perhaps are a little bit uncertain about what they're doing in their parenting.
And just to answer your question, Cecile, what do I bring? I bring life's experience, because being the 8th of 11, going back to the Caribbean, seeing how my older brothers and sisters' families are, my cousins, how people live very basic, very community-based. Everybody, family land. It's not like here where they're brought up in Luton, but then they move out to Middlesbrough and they only see the family maybe once a month on a Zoom call, or if there's a main family event. what we see is people who are local, they're using the language. I'm talking to them, I'm saying, your son is 3 months old, enjoy it now. Make the time for him or her now, because I'm a father and a grandfather, and I'm a better grandfather than what I was a father. And I point that out to them. I say, because it's on the job learning. And they look at me kind of surprised. And they say, you got grandchildren? I said, yeah. They said, well, how old are you then? And I says, well, look, my grandchildren, I've got 5 grandchildren, all boys. And I work with them. I work with the parents. And I say to the dads to come to the sessions. None of them have turned up yet. So, but they're aware of some of the things that we teach the parents regarding tooth decay, regarding sweet drinks, regarding healthy living, good food, exercise, walking, helping them to read and writing, and their writing ages, and their social skills. I say, because once they get 16, 18, it's goodbye, Dad, goodbye, Mum. I'm a big boy now, big girl now. I do my own thing.
Yeah. So
that's what I'm bringing to it, and they look at me kind of politely surprised, but it's fun. I make it fun for myself and for them wherever possible. And where I see the nice thing with Sharon's team, they're always on board and they know what they're looking for. That they're taking details off the parents. We had one father, he's got twins. One of them's got learning difficulties and he thinks the other one was on the spectrum. So we pointed out to the team, can you talk to them? Can you book them in? Can we sort things out? Yeah. So that's what I'm bringing to it. And because of my travel, I've been to Romania. I pointed out that to 1 or 2 of the Romanian fathers. I've been to Africa as well as the Caribbean. So I'll just say culturally, there's so many different aspects of raising a child.
Yeah.
A father's role. And I point out to the fathers, I even said to Sharon, we don't just want the fathers there, we wanted the uncles, the godfathers, the grandfathers. And with the Italian family, the grandfather was there and he looked like something out of the Godfather movie with his hat. But his English was better than my Italian. And we ended up talking, I think, for the best part of maybe 3/4 of an hour.
Yeah,
because he was saying about how things are different here in England and when he was growing up and what have you. So whatever somebody's culture, they'll always love their kids.
Yeah,
and it's just really a case of helping them on that journey and what to expect, because you can see with some of the kids, you can see that their social skills, they want to hang on to Dad in the group, and others are just happy running around and enjoying themselves. So it's nice to have the mix.
Yeah.
I mean, with the dad's sorry.
Can I just jump in, Ash? Because we've literally only got a couple of minutes left. So, what day is the fathers group? What day?
Okay. So the NSPCC is, is on the 12th of July, and you can get the details from using the Flying Start email address. We run the Dad's Group is usually the last Saturday in the month between 10 o'clock and 11:30, 12 o'clock. The next one, I think, is on the 19th, I think. No, July the 19th. So the next one is not this Saturday, 2 Saturdays' time, which I think is what, 24th or something. So
21st.
21st.
So that's what we do. It's the last, and it's for those who might be listening. I mean, particularly any of the mums or who may be listening. Encourage your partners to come along. It's low key. It's not high pressure. It's come along, speak to some dads. We tend to have a theme, but we don't press it on anybody particularly. So, and we're also a drop-in. So there's guidance, advice. There's a myriad of people who can offer support in various sorts of ways. And if nothing else, it's just 2 hours of time out for a dad and their kids just to kind of play and read. So there's no pressure there at all, really.
And the picnic in the park?
That's next Wednesday. That's at Wardown Park between
that's
10
the 18th.
It's the 18th, yeah, Wednesday the 18th, between 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. So there's lots of activities. There's lots of there's lots of information areas as well for various things like schools and well-being and so on and so forth. But there's just lots of other things as well. Usually well attended, particularly with children who are preschool age, because obviously if the weather's nice, it's just a nice day out doing stuff. But with the dads that we work with, yeah, as long as the children are under the age of 8, the children can come along as well. So
okay.
And the reason we're working with kids under 8 is we're volunteers. There isn't funding for the older children. But if whoever's listening out there, if there are any concerns you have with the older children, get in touch with Sharon's team at Flying Start.
Wonderful.
Okay.
So, need to wrap it up for today. But we will have both of you back on again.
Oh, so please do, yeah.
Talk about it again. So just so that we can try and share it so that people know what's happening. We'll put all the information on our pages as well.
Yep.
So if anybody watches now, later, catch up, whatever, and you want some info, if you can't find the information, then just drop us a message. But the Flying Starts info will be on our pages, always is. Because we've had quite a few shows where Sharon has been on as well. So yeah, it's been really good. Thank you.
No, thank you. I'd love to come back. There's so much to discuss.
Thank you.
We will have you both back on again because just want to share what is actually going on in Luton and what the dads can get involved in, because dads, I just think, are sometimes just missed.
100%.
You know?
Yeah.
Quite often, if they're not shouting from the rooftops, nobody else is shouting for them.
I think I know you want to wrap up. I think sometimes they're missed, and after a while, the longer they are missed, the more happy they are to be invisible. They just kind of
course. Yeah.
lurk around in the back, and I think that's important to bring them coax them some way.
Yeah.
Forward.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
You.
Don't disappear. But we are wrapping up for today. I think Shelley's disappeared, so I will attempt to end it. I'm not very good with IT.
It all goes blank.
I'm still using pen and paper. So let's end it for today. So bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.